G'day, Internet. I am George. We are all George. We have a wonderful guest today, George from CryptosRUs. George, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Max.
I really appreciate you taking the time. You've got a wildly successful crypto channel in CryptosRUs. Before we get into the crypto stuff, maybe we could talk a little bit about your YouTube journey, if that's okay. Would you, when did you start? What was your strategy, and how's it been working out for you?
It's been a long journey, that's for sure. I started my channel in 2017. My Bitcoin journey started around 2013, tail end of 2013, when Bitcoin was coming up to 1,000 for the first time. I got into mining back then, more so of Litecoin mining, because Bitcoin already moved to ASIC miners, and I was more interested in picking up GPUs and didn't Litecoin mining, but didn't really understand much about why Bitcoin was created and the whole backstory with Satoshi and breaking free of the tyranny of the banks and central banks and all that stuff, right? Didn't understand any of that. I got in like most people for the money. Things came down and it was bad, and I got out. But then I got back in 2017 after Bitcoin came back up to about 1,000. Then I realized, well, I made a big mistake. I should have stayed in. This is not just a bubble. It's here to stay. So started my journey back up in 2017. And then that's when I started my website, early 2017, CryptosRUs.com. And then people told me, hey, you gotta jump on YouTube, man. That's the future. And I really did not want to do it. Like me, I was just looking at myself versus others. I'm like, I don't have the personality. I'm not as knowledgeable as the other guys, but I started my channel anyways, late 2017. Did pretty good for a couple months, tail end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And then things got bad. We went to crypto winter. So basically my channel was pretty much dead for like 3 years. I had my loyal followers. What's that?
Were you still creating content during those 3 years? Even though you say it's dead, did you mean it wasn't growing, or you weren't posting videos?
No, I was still streaming once a day, every day.
Wow.
Even though there are days where I just really did not want to stream. I'm like, what's the point? But I'm like, well, just like my investing, journey, where I look at, well, I should have just stayed in, right? I should never have gotten out. So I'm just going to stay in. I treat the same way with my channel. I'm like, no matter what, I'm going to stream, even though I don't want to, or there's nothing to talk about, or there's a lot of hate. I'm going to do it anyways. And I kept doing it. So I never gave up. And my channel finally blew up early 2021. Like, it was very stagnant from 2018 to 2021. And then, the market came up and I got more attention. I covered this mining pool called F2 pool. I was dumping a ton of Bitcoin. I think I was one of the first ones to kind of look at on-chain metrics and bring it to light that, yeah, there's this one large mining pool that's dumping, tons of Bitcoin. So it's going to cause the market to fall. And it did. And it brought me a lot of attention. And then my channel blew up and it's been rising steadily ever since. So that's kind of my whole journey.
Good stuff. And I was chatting to the guys at Altcoin Daily there, the brothers, and they said, I had this conversation about, as a YouTuber, just the grind of, oh my God, I got to make more content. I can't do it. I'm like, I make videos when I want to do it. I do it because I love it. And there'll be days, weeks, as my subscribers well know, there'll be days or weeks I go without making content. Chatting to Altcoin Daily guys, they say, yeah, we've saved, because we're a team, we're brothers. It's like we've saved each other many, many times where we have days off, but you're just on your own every single day for years and years and years making content. So that is an impressive journey. So well done for staying the course.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, the Aaron Austin, they're kind of cheating because there's two guys that could rotate, right?
Yeah.
Not like anyone else in this space.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else is going to grind.
Right.
So good stuff. Well, awesome to hear your story, and a great little lesson there on perseverance and staying the course. I love stuff like that. All right, let's get over to crypto here. And so, as I mentioned before the call, I'm big in the macro guy. I love the macroeconomic stuff and the big picture stuff. It's the big moves that I really, really care about. And we've just got so much going on. We've got, is America facing recession? I mean, we had a first quarter negative growth. It's looking like we're going to have a second quarter negative growth. That's the official definition of recession. What's going to happen here in the markets in the short term, medium term, and long term? Let's hear what you got to say.
Well, but Bitcoin has never been tested yet in a true recession, right? Because it was created out of the last recession after 2000. What happened in 2008, 2009? That's when Satoshi, whoever he or she or group, they developed Bitcoin because of distrust in the government and the central bank and banks overall. So Bitcoin has never gone through a full-blown recession. We have up and downs. We had geopolitical macro stuff that has happened over the years, but a true recession we haven't seen. But right now, I would say Bitcoin is doing pretty darn well, despite having 6 horrific months from our previous peak, right around December-ish. I look at it this way. In 2020, when we had that last mini doomsday drop, black swan event, recession, however you want to define it, Bitcoin was down below 4,000 at that point. March of 2020, I remember it vividly. Bitcoin fell down from 11,000 to about 3,800, right? And then I look at that time period and look at it now. Despite, the fall from top, but Bitcoin is at 30,000. We're still nearly 10x higher than that point. So I think this has proven in some light that Bitcoin can stand on its own and can stand a recession. Now, if the economy gets really, really, really bad from here on out and gets much worse and Dow and NASDAQ fall another 20, 30%, can Bitcoin fall down? Yeah. But do I think it's going to fall back down to 3,800 or below 4,000? No. So I think Bitcoin, will continue on. I think it's a very different asset class versus anything else out there. I think right now we're seeing that coupling, unfortunately, because a lot of Wall Street guys got in and they treat it just like a risk on asset, just like any tech stock. And when they get fearful and they sell everything. So that's why I think we do see this coupling between like NASDAQ and Bitcoin. But, we know that Bitcoin is not a tech stock. It'll prove all the doubters wrong. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think I had a subscriber ask the question. He's like, why don't you mention that it's like we're at the bottom of the regression band and we're really, really low in terms of the historical perspective and I'm like, yes, but also the point you just articulated is Bitcoin has never ever seen a full proper recession, which means I think we're going to break the regression band on the lower side in the short term. But your point is absolutely valid. I think it is holding up extremely well. I think it's got plenty further to go on the downside. But I think the most interesting part about crypto for me is that the speed with which it's going to come back. Because yes, it's correlated. Yes, it's doing the same thing that everything else is doing. But in those bad times, they're going to put on the money printers big time. And that's when Bitcoin shines. It has this immediate effect in a similar way gold gets hit, Bitcoin gets hit, everything gets hit. Gold and Bitcoin usually punch back stronger than anything else. And I think we're going to see that in spades this time, precisely because there are so many people entering this market from a fundamental point of view, because maybe they've been through a cycle or two similar to your journey. One of the things I say on this channel, it's Bitcoin is an incredible invention, but one of its other great gifts that it's given the world is that it forces people to learn monetary history, learn monetary science, learn what the whole inflation concept is. It just rams it down your throat. People come for the dollars, and that education just gets rammed down their throat by great YouTube channels like yours. Hopefully, I can contribute in some small way as well. And it's a really, really important part of this thing that so many people understand that. And I think as the next cycle of printing comes along, when they realize, oh shit, we're in deep, deep recession, we're going to do something. Bitcoin's going to come back with such speed and velocity, it's going to blow people's minds. That's my opinion. But I think plenty of downside to go in between now and then. What are your thoughts?
When you say plenty, what's plenty to you, Max? At what
I
level?
I think we're going to see at least like 22. Like that would be my first stop.
Okay.
But I can see us getting into the teens as well. I don't think we're going below 10, but I think we're going to hit at least 22. At least kiss up against the highs, the 2017 high, which I mean is technically 19 point something. But I think we'll see at least 22. But then I'll revisit it then. But I think we could definitely get into the teens and head down to about the 14, something like that.
So let me ask you, is it, and I've heard of 22, 21 around there. Are you basing that off of the fact that the 200 weekly moving average is where Bitcoin usually falls to as a support before it bounces up? Is that why you came up with that number, or some other?
There's a few different metrics, but yes, that is one of them.
Right.
And another one is that that previous 2017 high. It was an interesting one. As we blew through 20, I expected us to might hit a little bit of resistance and maybe do like a cup and handle around 20, like lever, bounce on the way up to bounce off 20 and come back, and it didn't. It just blew through the 20s really quickly from 20 all the way to 30, went into 40, came back and did the whole thing. But around the 30s. So I was really surprised at how quickly it blew through the 20 on the way through. But despite that, it's an argument to say 20 is not that strong a point of support or resistance. But despite that, I think we'll still hit there around the 20 and the 30. I think it's if you take a big zoom out from that 3 up to the 69, you also get a nice Fibonacci bounce around 20 as well. So there's a few different points of confluence there for me.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that is because I've heard a lot of people that rely on TA come up with a lot of levels like that, a lot of using previous history to determine where Bitcoin could fall to, and it certainly can fall to that point. But like you said, we're in a different situation. Bitcoin has never been in a recession, so some of the long-term macro models can be invalidated due to that. But another event that happened in 2021 that Bitcoin hasn't seen before either was adoption by institutional investors. And that is something that I also think affects all previous charts and metrics and lows and stuff like that. And that's because you never had a guy like Michael Saylor come out and all of a sudden go all in and go more than all in and leverage and basically buy 130,000 Bitcoins for his company, not to mention the 40 or 50,000 that he owns. And he spurred this movement where now you have Tesla holding $2 billion of the Bitcoin. SpaceX owns Bitcoin. Square owns Bitcoin. These guys are not selling. They're not going to sell at all. So I think it's a little bit different from that perspective too. I think that is why Bitcoin is holding better than I think many people have anticipated. I think many people thought that we would have been at 20,000 already, but it's not. So I do think that Bitcoin is stronger. I don't necessarily believe it has to hit some of these points before it rallies upwards, although I'm fully aware that it could happen. There has been times where I thought this couldn't happen with Bitcoin, like in 2020. I never thought Bitcoin would be at 3,000s again. Never in my life did I think that it would fall to 3,800 in 2020, right? Even briefly, but I just didn't think it would happen. So of course, anything can happen, but I just think that if you're going to use the argument, well, things are different now, right? So then you can't use the same kind of models or technical analysis to project where Bitcoin can be because things are different now, right? So that's why I look at it that way. I don't necessarily believe it has to go to 22 or 20 or below before it can recover. I actually think we are in recovery right now.
That's a really, really good point you make. And let's stick with Saylor there for a second. Let's use him as an avatar because he's not the only one. He's certainly the most public.
Right.
But what's really interesting about this new kind of market actor is that he is sweeping all of his company's monthly profits into Bitcoin. And so if the price of Bitcoin falls, the amount of Bitcoin he buys goes up because he's assuming his monthly profits for his business stay the same. And so that's a really interesting concept. These kinds of players like Michael Saylor, what they're doing is if the lower price of Bitcoin goes, as long as those monthly profits there for his business are there, he is going to accumulate more and more Bitcoin every single month because because that cash flow allows it. So definitely an interesting point you make there. And I think there's some validity to it for sure.
Yeah, I just don't know. Before Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, because MicroStrategy's been around, since .com days, some controversy around Michael Saylor, but, I always wonder, like, how much cash is his company really generating? Because it seems like he has hundreds of millions just sitting on a balance sheet, for a relatively small business intelligence company, right? That has, I know, some contract work with the government and stuff, but man, he seems to pull like money out of thin air all the time, 20 million, 100 million. Yeah. So it's just like, it makes you wonder how much cash flow does he really generate every year?
Yeah, I totally hear you. And the answer is, I don't know. I haven't looked deep into it, but yeah. I'm pretty sure with those monthly buys, that's just sweeping the monthly cash in there. But I guess a counter to that argument is very, very different times, I think, with regards to the macro, because we haven't had the inflation like this before. And that's just a really, really telling factor. We haven't had mortgage rates go up by the ridiculous percentage that they have gone up in such a short amount of time in decades and decades and decades. And so I think between those things, we're going to see a much uglier macro system that we've seen throughout Bitcoin's entire life. Like I said, hasn't really seen anything since 2008. So that's another reason why I think, although there's these new participants like Saylor, that's an argument for the positive. I think the argument for the negative is a little stronger, which is this very, very different environment that we're in right now.
Do you think the overall U.S. economy is going to get much worse from where it is now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and there's a lot of components to that. So even in the times when the economy is getting better, I would argue it's getting worse because it's requiring so much printing to achieve it.
Right.
And it sets up this system where inflation shows up 2, 5, 10 years later. So even in the situations where the economy is supposedly getting better and things are looking great and Trump's texting every 2 minutes that the stock market's going up again, all because of those things, it's not really getting better. It's just getting papered over, and the catastrophe is setting up to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I just have a huge problem with that situation. Now, I think eventually, those chickens come home to roost, but, you don't want to be a broken clock because, even a broken clock's right, twice a day. It's like the Peter Schiffs. And I've been somewhat in that category, saying some really bad stuff going on.
I've been hearing over the years about, the endless printing and how it's going to bring destruction to a lot of things, to the dollar, to the economy, to the Fed. And a lot of guys have been shouting that for years. Ray Dalio, one of the most respected guys, been saying that cash is trash for a long, long, long time. Robert Kiyosaki and Peter Schiff and all these guys been screaming it for many, many years, and we now do see that, right? We see the government printed 4, 5, 6 trillion. I lost count how much they printed, most ever in history. The U.S. dollar supposedly, got devalued by it. But here's the counter, and I'm not the most expert, guy on foreign currencies and how they all relate and stuff like that. But you look at the DXY and it's skyrocketing because other countries' fiats have been devaluing more than the dollar, which actually gave the dollar strength. So it's like, well, what happened? All this talk about destruction happening, it's not really happening. So is the government going to learn anything from this? I don't know. I mean, right now, yes, inflation is high, but if the economy gets worse again, let's say Powell gets too aggressive with his rate hikes and inflation does come down dramatically and somehow he can get back to 3% like what he's wanting, and we're in full-blown recession, what's to stop them from just printing more money and doing it over again? Because it seems like
they
we
keep
haven't
getting
really
away with
learned
it.
anything, right?
Yeah, they keep getting away with it, right? Got away with it in 2008. They got away with it after COVID.
So I'm still waiting for that. Well, not that I really want to see it in my lifetime. I don't want to see the destruction of the central bank or the USD. I think it's going to bring a lot more problems. But this what is going to be the tipping point that will make the government realize, or governments around the world realize, that we can't just print more money? Like, I don't know what is going to make them realize that. Maybe when Bitcoin takes over one day, but I don't know what else is going to make them see that.
Yeah, I hear you. And a couple little distinctions along the way there. As you said there, the DXY is comparison to other fiat currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very important to understand. So people often get the question, well, how can we have this huge inflation, which demonstrates a weakening dollar, but the DXY is going up? And that's why. Inflation is measuring the dollar against a basket of consumer goods, a pretty useless basket, I would argue. It doesn't include energy, doesn't include rent, doesn't include all the major things that most people spend most of their paycheck on. But it's against a basket of goods. And the DXY is measuring it against other fiat currencies. And I think Brett Johnson's dollar milkshake theory, not sure if you're familiar with that one, George, is the answer to that. It's kind of what you said. It's for all of the US dollar's fault, it is the cleanest dirty shirt in the hamper. And so it gives it strength against the other fiat currencies. And again, I love that in a little bit of a harsh and sadistic way. I get that, and I apologize for that. But if you think inflation's bad here, check it out what it is elsewhere. Check out how much people are hurting in the rest of the world. And again, you've just got this situation where the whole world has got to come together, and the developing world even more so. How do I protect my savings? And you've got the people of Turkey, learning this to the tune of scores of percent per month.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people of Venezuela doing that. And I think, these are the areas that are going to crumble first. And I think you'll see a lot of other fiat currencies go the way of the dodo before you see the US dollar do the same thing. And in that interim period, I think you're going to see dollars get stronger for that reason. I think Brent Johnson's got that right in that storyline here. And I watched it was a really good debate. So I've seen him and Peter Schiff have this debate probably a dozen times over the years. And they kind of always say the same things, don't really get too far. George Gammon did hosted the debate with them, I think yesterday or last night, or no, relatively recently. And he in the last 5 or 10 minutes, George finally got something new out of them, and it was a good one. I highly recommend people check that out. So, because if you've been following that debate, they have it every couple of months, and it's the same stuff over and over and over again. But they made a few distinctions in there in the last couple of minutes, which I really appreciated, and it was good. And it lends itself to that big question. It's like Peter Schiff's always like, well, I'm just going to skate to where the puck's going to be. Like, I know how it ends, so I'll just get there. I was like, but yeah, Peter, like if it gets there, 30, 40 years from now, and you've been wrong the whole time, that's not going to work out. So that's something you need to, you need to factor into stuff. Your timing is important. And I think Brent Johnson's got a good argument there for why the dollar gets stronger for a little while longer.
Yeah. So, I mean, to clarify what I said, Ed, I think you're 100% right. I mean, inflation, if you're measuring fiat and the cost of goods and services, obviously it's going up. But when you have the dollar still showing strength versus other fiats, well, then it's still, in my opinion, it's seen like almost like a safe haven for other fiat currencies. So if you're holding on to euro or the British pound or Japanese yen, which is, the DXY is comprised of these, if you look at them, they are definitely falling. They're falling faster than the dollar. So the dollar is showing strength. So a lot of countries may be turning to the USD. But I think, and I think we're starting to see that already with certain countries, they don't want to shift to USD. They want to, shift to something else. And that's why I think we're starting to see countries start looking at Bitcoin, right? So even though right now, I think, almost every country out there is looking at the USD, and because of its strength, But at some point, we're going to start seeing that shift towards something else. And what better than Bitcoin, because it's non-sovereign. So countries that are supporting Bitcoin isn't supporting any other country, right? Unlike, I'm pretty sure, like China, they want to get off the USD standard badly. They don't want to support the USD, right? But the world operates in USD. And look at what's happening with Russia right now. Well, all the sanctions, they want to desperately get off the USD, but they just can't yet. So there's a lot of countries that don't want to embrace the USD. So they want to embrace something that's neutral. And well, at least I think so, or maybe something that they think they could control. But what better than Bitcoin? Which is why I think countries that are facing hyperinflation right now, they're looking at Bitcoin, giving it a serious look. And of course, we have smaller countries like El Salvador that already embraced it. But I think we're going to see more and more of that. And that may lead to one day, and I'm not saying anytime soon, one day where the USD is no longer the reserve currency of the world, right? That may be 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. But I think we're starting to see that a little bit right now.
Just a little bit. Yeah. I believe the Russian finance minister said a couple of days ago that he wouldn't object to international settlement occurring in cryptocurrency. Right. And you're right. I think it's inevitable. So it's a little bit, I got to take my own medicine here in that I was like Peter Schiff, like it's like just skating to where the puck will be. Like, what about the timing along the way? I'm like the same position. I 100% believe I know where the puck's going to end up. The puck's going to end up with Bitcoin as the world reserve currency. I think that is absolutely inevitable. But the question is, does that happen in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, or 30 years?
Right.
And that's the big one. And that's something I really kind of opened my own mind to just recently. It's like, hang on a minute. I think this just helps me. I think that the market's going to pull back here, and that just helps me acquire more Satoshi. So that's just a good thing.
Yeah, I think ultimately all of us in the game, or at least all of us that are producing videos or just going on podcasts and writing articles, the Bitcoin bulls, I think they all can agree on one thing, and that is to stack as much sats as you can before Bitcoin becomes a world currency or before it goes much higher. I mean, that's ultimately what the end goal is, right? How we get there is a little bit different. Some will trade, some will just continue DCA, right? But ultimately, I think we're all in the same mindset of, yeah, Bitcoin is going to be the end game. So we want to stack up as much as we can before we get to that point.
Yeah, 100%.